In this lesson, we're going to look at the Moon's orbit. The first thing we're going to say is that the Moon's orbit isn't in fact circular, it's an ellipse. That's to say, it's shaped like an egg. Now, in this diagram, I have the Moon and the Earth, and I should mention that the Moon, as you now know, is considerably smaller than I have depicted here. It's about 3.5 times smaller than the Earth. And the distance from the Earth is a lot greater than depicted in this diagram. Now, I'm not going to talk about the mathematics of ellipses because that's quite complicated, but one thing I will say is that the Earth is not positioned at the centre of the ellipse, but it's positioned at something called the focus of the ellipse. So it's going to be positioned here, off centre, like that. So the Moon follows an elliptical orbit around the Earth, and it completes the orbit once in approximately 28 days. Okay. And as you notice here, it moves in an anti-clockwise or counterclockwise direction. So let's just make a note of those points. First of all, we have an elliptical orbit, and that's completed once in approximately 28 days. And the Moon moves in an anti-clockwise direction. Now, because the Moon is moving in an elliptical orbit, there are times in its orbit when it's quite near to the Earth. This is known as the perigee, and when it's in its perigee, it's at approximately 364,000 kilometers. And then when it moves to the opposite side of the Earth, this is known as the apogee, and at the apogee its distance is approximately 406,000 kilometers. So as a result of that, as we view the Moon from the Earth, its size or diameter appears to change. Okay, here we view the Moon as it is in its perigee when it's nearest to the Earth. And here we see the Moon as it is in its apogee when it's furthest from the Earth. So because the distance from the Earth to the Moon is constantly changing, we often have to talk about the average distance. And the average distance is approximately 380,000 kilometers. Now, there is one more thing we're going to point out about the Moon's orbit before we move on to look at the phases of the Moon, and that is, as the Moon orbits the Earth, we always view the same side. So if you're an astronaut positioned here when the Moon's in its perigee, then you're facing towards the Earth, and then as the Moon orbits, you will continue to face towards the Earth, looking that way. And in its apogee, you'll still be facing towards the Earth, and wherever you are in its orbit, you're always facing towards the Earth. Now this happens, although perhaps it's hard to see this, but the Moon actually spins on its axis. So as it moves in its orbit, it actually completes one spin on its axis. And that spin is exactly synchronized with its orbit. So as a result, we never actually get to see this side of the Moon. So we can say that the Moon spins like the Earth, but only once every lunar orbit. That's to say, once every 28 days.